Morning, folks, and thanks very much for joining us today. My name is Tom Langwer. I'm the Executive Director of the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters. We're delighted to have you here with us today for a very, very exciting event. Congresswoman Betty McCollum has introduced a bill, House Resolution 5598, that would protect the watershed of the boundary waters with potentially toxic sulfide ore mining. And today that bill is going to have a hearing in front of a House Natural Resources Committee. That hearing is going to start at 9 o'clock our time. It's going to be live from DC, and we're going to switch you right from our introduction this morning over to that live stream in DC. But what we wanted to do first is give you a little background on the issue and what we're actually going to see today, let you hear from some other voices, and just kind of set the table so that you've got some information when we do cut to the Washington DC live stream. So the issue, of course, in which the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters has been working on since 2012 is a proposed sulfide ore copper nickel mine by a company called Twin Metals Minnesota, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Antofagasta, a Chilean-based mining giant. You can find all this information on our website, savetheboundarywaters.org. But this mine will cause devastation in the boundary waters, not just because of the terrestrial impact that's going to happen just outside the boundary waters, but because of all the water quality impacts that are going to flow directly into the boundary waters and have these permanent devastating impacts. So we have been focused on fighting that. We've been working with Congress and specifically with Representative McCollum. And this bill is the fruition of many years of trying to get some protection of the boundary waters. And we're just delighted and so thankful for Representative McCollum for doing this. So what we're going to do today is we're going to hear from some other people who are people who use the boundary waters for recreation, for their business, for their livelihoods, and hear their perspectives on this issue and what their take is on Representative McCollum's bill. So today I'm delighted we're going to have several people commenting. The very first one is going to be Bob Hammond. Bob is a retired miner from Sudan, Minnesota, who's been watching this, following this, involved in this for a long time. And we're delighted that Bob can be with us here today. So I'm going to now turn it over to Bob. And Bob, how you doing? Tell us what's going on.
Good morning, Tom. Thanks for this opportunity to speak in defense of the boundary waters. I'm Bob Hammond from Sudan, Minnesota. My wife, Pat, and I are retired there. I started working in the mines over 50 years ago. I started going into the boundary waters over 50 years ago. And so I have a great appreciation for the boundary waters, what it's done for me, and I understand what mining has done to our environment. In my younger days when I worked on the mines, I drove out on the dikes around the tailings pond and I saw those leaking tailings ponds that were leaking 50 years ago. They're still leaking today. I saw situations where the tailings dried out and we had tons of dust blowing into adjacent mining community. It was so bad that the mining company actually bought a street sweeper for that city. And so we can look at that and understand that even using dry stacking, we shouldn't expect that that will solve all of our problems with tailings. Pat and I enjoy fishing and canoeing in the area where Twin Metals is mining. Over the years, we've seen degradation from mining already in that area. We had barges drilling out in Birch Lake. We had helicopters flying over with survey equipment. We have drilling rigs running up and down our Forest Service roads. Mining is already degrading the Superior National Forest and is a threat to the boundary waters. That's why we think it's so important that we support the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters. It's important that we support Betty McCollum's bill, 5598. The boundary waters is a great resource for Minnesotans and for the world. We ask that everyone support this bill and that we protect our natural resources in northern Minnesota. Back to you, Tom.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. It's wonderful to have you as a supporter. We appreciate everything that you do for the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters. So next, we're delighted to have a young woman who represents the Kids for the Boundary Waters. More than 300 organizations that support the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters. One of the very important ones is a group called Kids for the Boundary Waters. And while we call them kids, this is a group of young adults from the ages about 16 to 26 Very interested, very concerned in this issue because obviously they are at the beginning of the time that they're going to be spending in the boundary waters. So very concerned about what's happening in the boundary waters today. One of the spokespeople, one of the very passionate people around this whole issue is a young woman by the name of Julia Ruel. And I'm delighted that Julia could join us today to give you a little bit of perspective on Kids for the Boundary Waters and why this is an important issue for them. So Julia, please, thank you for being here today. Please tell us your story.
Thank you, Tom, and my thanks to Representative McCollum for introducing this bill. This is exactly the kind of leadership we want to see from our elected officials. I am a high schooler and a board member for Kids for the Boundary Waters, and I first became involved with the Kids for the Boundary Waters after winning the essay contest for Ely Outfitting Company's Teen Essay Contest for a fully outfitted trip to the Boundary Waters in 2018. And I wrote this essay in the midst of chemotherapy and radiation treatments for brain cancer. Having been diagnosed in December of 2017, writing this essay helped me to reflect on the connections the Boundary Waters has built in my life. I remembered how I used the Boundary Waters as my happy place while I was sitting in MRIs, and also how I channeled perseverance and strength that I learned from portaging when the treatments got especially rough. The Boundary Waters has clearly shaped me. Transitioning almost directly out of treatment and into Kids for the Boundary Waters helped me to overcome the identity crisis that could have loomed for me. I worked hard to learn the ins and outs on the first trip and have now led meetings at 2 more DC trips, as we have now brought approximately 100 passionate youth to fight with us. In our meetings, we urge congressmen and women to base their decisions on the science of the issue rather than politics, while also communicating clearly the deep emotional importance the Boundary Waters holds for youth of this time, who otherwise are very, very stressed. Meeting with Representative McCollum has always been a treat. We never feel compelled to convince her of anything. She really gets it. And she has done her research and made her conclusions, and she has come to the conclusion that this is the wrong place for this mine. Not here, not now, not ever. So, Representative McCollum, on behalf of Kids for the Boundary Waters and myself, thank you so much for your leadership, and we are totally supportive of this bill. Back to you, Tom.
Our third guest today is Steve Baracus, and many of you will recognize that name. Steve owns and operates one of the large outfitting businesses in Ely. Obviously, that's one of the businesses that is totally dependent on the wilderness, and any threat to the wilderness is a threat to that business and many others at Ely. So Steve's got a wonderful insight from that perspective, and I'm delighted we could have Steve here today. Steve, please tell us what your thoughts are on this.
Hey, good morning, Tom. Glad to be here to help support this bill that Betty McCollum has introduced into the House. As you know, I've been in business up here in Ely for 40 years, and for the last 7 years we've been working hard to oppose the Twin Metals mine that would definitely have an impact on our business and on this beautiful land that we love so much. Nancy and I came here in 1975 as young biologists working for the EPA, and we worked on several studies, including the original copper-nickel study. We taught at the community college, and one of those courses was geology, at which time I learned a lot about the local geology and how delicate it is because of the lack of any buffering capacity here in the water. So copper mines around the world have all been known to pollute with acid mine drainage. So as soon as acid gets into the watershed here in the Boundary Waters, it would change the ecology of the aquatic environment almost instantaneously, and that always happens at all copper mines around the world. Sulfide ore is an insidious product of mining that comes up out of the deep earth and is exposed to air and oxygen and water, and very quickly starts to leach acid into the watershed and heavy metals. So we can't have that happen here in the Boundary Waters. This wild place that we love so much, that supports our business, is critical to be maintained in its pristine form. So I'm happy to be here to help support Congresswoman McCollum and her efforts to prevent any copper mining, any sulfide ore mining in this Boundary Waters watershed. And I look forward to having that happen soon and live happily ever after with a beautiful Boundary Waters that sustains our business into the indefinite future.
Well, thank you very much to all of our guests for your perspectives on the Boundary Waters and this particular issue. As I mentioned, this project, should it go forward, will just devastate the Boundary Waters, and so it's just imperative that we stop this project, and it's so important that we support Betty's bill. We're very, very appreciative of Representative McCollum for moving this forward. We're going to work with the rest of Congress now to get the whole House behind this, to get the whole Senate behind it, and move this bill forward. If you're wondering what you can do to help, please do check our website, savetheboundarywaters.org. There's a number of pages on there that have just background information. You can go on and sign the petition if you have not already, so you can get additional information. There's information on how you can contact your congresspeople, and we encourage you to do that. Of course, we rely on donations to fund our efforts, and so we're always appreciative of your donations as well. At 9 a.m. Central Time, which is we're almost there, we're going to go over to Washington, D.C. to see the live stream of the hearing on House File 5598. There will be a link right after I go off the air here that will direct you to that site, so please do stay tuned. Please do watch the hearing, and as we suggested, take a look at our website and see how you can become more involved to help us fight this line. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for being a supporter of the Boundary Waters.